inflation. Everyone's talking about inflation. Everything costs more. Food, gas, clothes. But has it all been designed this way? Brew some coffee, pull up a chair, and open your mind. Today, Science versus Conspiracy will be discussing inflation and the consequences of government actions from the COVID-19 lockdowns.
Ooh,
Over coffee.
over coffee.
So welcome back to the show. I am your co-host, Conspiracy.
And I'm Science.
Today, we're, like I said in the intro, we'll be talking about inflation.
You know, it's unbelievable that the price of eggs has gone up something like 56%.
That is insane.
Have you seen that statistic?
I haven't seen that one specifically, but I do have some notes here about dairy overall has increased 6 to 8%.
6 to 8%?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you weren't saying 68.
No,
I was going to say, because I think
but it's going that way.
eggs is like the highest though, I think. So
Yeah.
that's why I brought that up right away.
Right, yeah. So on average, it's between 6 and 8%.
Okay.
And that's in 2023 already over 2022.
Wow.
Overall, I guess the grocery bill has increased by 10% since 2022, and it's set to go up another 5 to 7%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I can't be 100% sure that the number I'm talking about is Canadian. I think it actually might be American.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen that there is an actual, it's mayhem, people trying to get eggs in the States. Have you seen that?
No, but the other day my parents went to one of the grocery stores and there was no eggs. They couldn't get any eggs.
Wow. Yeah. It's mayhem in the States. And people who have chickens are laughing, but they're also, really hoping that their chickens are going to produce.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw one post that was kind of joking, saying, you ladies better produce right now or you're going in the air fryer. But when we talk about numbers of inflation, I do have some numbers to share that are from the States that we can talk about in a minute.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. Yeah, because the numbers that I was just talking about, they were actually from a study from Dalhousie University.
Okay.
So they were Canadian based.
Okay, cool.
So it's been 3 years since the COVID lockdowns began, and it quickly changed our lives forever.
Yeah.
We suddenly had restrictions placed upon us that the world hasn't seen in over 100 years. Masks became part of our everyday wardrobe, and waiting in line for fresh fruit at the grocery stores. Empty shelves became the norm because supply chain reasons. Banks cut interest rates to the lowest levels in history, opening the door for the housing market to explode. Bidding wars pumped up the housing prices sharply. Houses that sold for $500,000 were now selling for over $1 million. Governments around the world put a stranglehold on small business while letting larger multinational corporations remain open. And at the same time, the governments handed out money to anyone who applied. Millions were spent rushing and development of apps for smartphones so the government would have a system in place to track our movements across borders. Free to travel was stopped. After 3 years of behavior modification training, we were ready for the Great Reset, which was the theme of the 2021 World Economic Forum in Davos. The idea was sold to us as a way for the countries to rebuild after COVID. In a statement made by Klaus Schwab back in 2016 in his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, he said, "By 2030, we will own nothing and will be happy." Even though he said this in 2016, it often gets attributed to the Davos conference. And we've seen this owning nothing and will be happy for several years now, with subscription services and monthly fees for just about everything that we do.
Right.
Streaming services like Netflix and Disney Plus have changed the way that we consume entertainment. We once bought VHS tapes and DVDs and finally Blu-rays. We pay for it once and we could watch it anytime we want. We didn't have to rely on an internet connection or monthly fees to enjoy the movie. We have vehicle share programs in most major cities, which eliminates the need for owning a personal vehicle. And even car manufacturers are now offering subscription services for add-on features after purchase.
What do you mean?
I think Volkswagen is one of them. They're piloting this project in Europe that for their electric cars to extend the range of their vehicle if they want upgraded audio and navigation, and it's all part of an add-on or driving road pricing for distance. You pay for so much. You can go so far. If you want to drive further, then you have to pay extra for it.
Okay, gotcha.
And gas prices dropped drastically during the lockdowns. Here in our area, a liter of gasoline went down to about 87 cents. And right now, it's back up over $2 in some places. So David Icke talks about a problem reaction solution. So was this all done by design? Creating the problem of COVID, the reaction is shutting the world's economy down, dropping the prices of everything, allowing personal debt to grow because money was so cheap to borrow. And once we're in too deep, then increasing the prices of everything over a short amount of time, which causes more families to be dependent on government support.
So am I hearing you right? There are those who are claiming then that COVID was a creation to reset global finances?
Yes. And either it was COVID, the virus itself was created by government. That's a whole nother topic. Or they jumped on the opportunity. They saw the opportunity with COVID to initiate this reset. This economic reset, rebuilding the world in their image.
There is a lot of paranoia in that last paragraph or so that you read. So here's the thing. I mean, I can't say it's not true. I don't have any evidence or support to either side. But I mean, my understanding is that, you know, I know a fair bit about respiratory diseases, having been a nurse for so long. They exist. They aren't necessarily created in a lab. There's zoonosis. You know, we get diseases from animals. That's how a lot of them come into our world, into our human world. So I don't doubt the origins of COVID. Okay. So we'll just put that out there and then we can move on.
Sure.
But what I might be, and you know, that's another topic, right? If we want to debate that 3 years later, I don't think there's any resolution, but I think what I might be a little less cynical about is that the government saw an opportunity and jumped on it, because that's what they do, you know? And it's interesting because my meme culture comes back into the podcast, but I saw something funny about in the 3 years, as you said, since the COVID lockdowns started. The first year it was toilet paper.
Yep.
And then the second year it was fruits and veg. And then the third year it was gas. And then now we're having an egg shortage.
Right. And
so how are these things even possible in a world where Amazon, I know supply chain is a thing, yeah, because reasons, right? Like you said. But I still, I'm jumping around here, but I am flummoxed that here in Canada, you can't just walk into the store and get children's Tylenol. Like, it's absolutely astounding.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Being relying on the government for these services that should be available.
Yeah,
But
we're completely reliant on them.
Yeah, and have they artificially manipulated the market so that there is these shortages? And that's why that's why I said supply chain reasons, because
Yeah.
because really there shouldn't be any reasons. Like, we should be able to manufacture and produce the products in Canada or in the United States and not have other countries being relying on other countries.
Yeah, like we were actually bringing in children's Tylenol and whatnot from the States for a little while. Even now, we can only buy one. It's one per household. They keep it behind the counter. You have to go ask the pharmacist for it because people were stockpiling like they did in the years before with gas, toilet paper, and fruits and vegetables.
Right. Yeah, and now, thank you, government, for saving us, bringing in the much needed Tylenol.
But so let me ask you, like, to what end? Why, especially when, children are our most vulnerable creatures, and there are, the children are our future. Why, to what end would they hold back children's medication? Like, that's just evil.
That's the definition of government. Evil. They want control. That's what it is. That's what it's always been
There's
about.
other things
control.
They can control, though. Why would they do that to young children?
The children are just a part of a pawn in this whole game of chess. They really want their parents, and if they can hold it over their parents, their child's safety and health, then they have full control over what they can and can't do with their parents' lives.
How?
So you're asking, how does the government hold power over its citizens?
Well, I mean, that's a very broad question, but what I mean is, what are the trickle-down effects? Like, what is the chain that you see? And I know we're jumping a little bit away from inflation, but we're not, because it's all about control, according to conspiracy theorists. But I want to see, how does this play out? So your child needs Tylenol, and you have to go ask for it from the pharmacist. Now, what does that do? What is the trickle-down effect that plays into how they control the parents? And
well, if there's a shortage, and then there's the government brings in extra supply, it boosts their popularity, and the government's the savior. And when it comes election time, they say, we were able to, at a time when children's medication was at a minimum, we were able to bring in supply and save your children. So then the parents will vote for the leader for that party and keep them in power for another 4 years or whatever.
How is it the government controlling the supply of Tylenol when it's manufacturers that make it and distribute it?
Just because the government, or just because a manufacturer says that their supply is limited, doesn't necessarily mean that the supply is limited. Take, for example, Apple or Samsung with their phones. You always hear right after the launch of a new product that the supply chain, they may not have enough product to meet the demand. So everybody rushes out and buys the new phone right away, making the company more money. Because then,
yeah, I get all that, but how does Tylenol?
So that's the same way.
And the government,
they make it. They say that there's a shortage. The government comes in, swooping in.
No. But you're saying that Tylenol is being controlled by the government. It's not the government who manufactures.
No. I understand
the Tylenol.
That.
So how are they controlling it?
They're controlling the distribution of
how?
it by artificially saying that there is a shortage.
But they're not saying it's the manufacturers who are saying that there's a shortage, and the government is responding to that.
Problem, reaction, solution.
The government doesn't distribute the meds.
No, but they control it.
Okay, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. How does this pertain to eggs then?
Same thing, because like you said, in a large country like Canada with the farmlands that we have, why is there an egg shortage?
Is that avian flu?
Well, so they say that there's some animal disease that is contributing to the lack of stock. But I would argue that it's impossible for a country of this size not to be able to get healthy eggs or meat from another area without causing shortages.
Right.
Because it's impossible that all farms everywhere in Canada have avian flu.
Yeah, we have a lot of farmland folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the States too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's what does like NAFTA and everything have to say about eggs coming up? Like,
well, I think I don't know the ins and outs about it. I'm not a NAFTA expert, but I know there are restrictions of dairy products and other meats coming across the borders.
Exactly. Yeah. Because there's even regulations. There have been some stores that have been selling U.S. milk, and it wasn't labeled as being U.S. milk.
Uh-oh.
And that's an issue because if it's not coming from Canada, it has to say. Okay, so going back to inflation.
Like,
I get how the supply and demand drives up the price.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the conspiracy theorists are saying that this is all either creation or severely opportunistic jump on by the government.
Yes.
And driving up the cost of everything, driving up inflation, puts us more under their control.
Correct. And like with the gas prices going from 87 cents during the pandemic to almost $2 a liter or over $2 a liter in some areas, like 13 cents of that is carbon tax. Then there's transportation tax. So if they really wanted to help out the everyday person, they'd be able to lower some of these taxes on top of taxes. And I'm not saying the governments are the only ones that are at fault here. Some of the corporations, like the oil and gas, they see an opportunity too. And it's like when like a cat sneezes in Missouri, that's reason enough to raise the price of gas.
And then, this hurts the low income stratum of the society the most. And
which makes them more reliant on government help.
Yeah.
So then the government's there. If you're relying solely on government help, then the government can tell you when and where and what to do a lot more easily.
So you think this is all like a grand master scheme, but why does the government need to control the bottom 10%, say, of people, economically speaking, or the middle class?
Well, they've been trying to erode the middle class for 50 plus years.
Why?
Because they want basically two classes. They want the upper class, the 1% that funds and pays for their re-elections and their campaigns, and then you have everybody else who they want to rely on their government for support. Because if the government is giving handouts and money to underprivileged part of society, then they have power over them. They're going to more likely to vote for them because they're giving them kind of free accommodations, free food.
But that's not going to happen for the vast majority of the population. Like, it's not going to get to the point where you and I and everybody that we know who is like solid middle class, we're not going to be the ones begging for food on the streets, you know, for the grace of God there, but for the grace of God go I, whatever.
No, but that's what they want.
I don't think so. I don't
No?
think so. Because you know how expensive it is to run those programs? Did you know it's more expensive, for example, to incarcerate somebody than it is to put them in supportive housing and have them fed by a meal program?
Right, but if everybody is at that bottom level and they can, like, haven't you ever seen any science fiction movie about a dystopian future? Because that's what they
Well,
want.
of course I have. But
Yeah.
science fiction movies and what's actually happening in our society today in the US, Canada, wherever, you know, it's not a direct translation.
I kind of disagree, but
No. Because, you know, the numbers of people who are unhoused, it's still, although it's way too high, it's still relatively small compared to the population, the percentage of the population that's housed.
no, but like how many people are on living off of their credit cards?
Oh, yeah.
And so the credit card companies can put 20% on their interest rates.
I think I saw something like credit card debt in the States is higher than it's been in decades.
Yeah, because people during the pandemic, it was they were given money and everything was at a discount because they were trying to keep the economy going.
Whoa, wait a minute. Okay, two things here.
Okay.
What do you mean they were given money?
Well, okay, so in the States and in Canada, the system was set up slightly different. In Canada, we had CERB, the whatever it stands
It
for.
was like Canadian Economic Recovery Benefit or something like that.
Yeah.
But not everybody got it.
But everybody could apply for it. And what's happening now is that anybody who wasn't eligible, they're being asked to repay it, which puts a strain on them financially now, probably putting it on credit card and going into even further debt. And the government, I'm suggesting that the government knew this was going to happen and let it happen, and they printed money. So when we were able to come out of it, that our money was worthless, essentially. Because what are we, like 75 cents US?
Yeah.
Like before the pandemic, or a couple of years before the pandemic, we were almost at par.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
I can't remember the year, but I remember it wasn't that long ago
Wow.
that we were almost level.
Wow.
And now,
I can't think that far back.
yeah, and now it hampers trade with our U.S. counterparts. It restricts our travel going across because nobody who wants to spend that much money on exchange when you're going for a vacation.
Yeah, sure.
So staying in Canada, so inadvertently, like they're not restricting our travel like some communist countries would restrict your travel, but they are restricting your travel by other means. But they're still trying to on one blah, blah, blah. On one hand they're doing all this restricting and tightening down, and then on the other hand they're saying, oh, but we're not doing it, and here's some extra money, and here's some program money for programs and all this stuff.
Yeah, the extra money in programs though, I mean, this is kind of something that conspiracy theorists do. Like, you throw out phrases like that when really there's very few specific programs.
Well, have you seen in the last day or two in the Canadian government that Christine Freeland um, gave, or like the government, Liberal government, federal government has given, it was like $8.5 billion to a non-existent company.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, what's that about?
So I don't know all the ins and outs about it because I've just started seeing it pop up on the news. But apparently they gave $8.5 billion to a non-existent company to combat like climate change or something. I gotta look into it more.
Whoa. Okay, so that's gonna have to be a conspiracy short for an upcoming audio. But let's get back to inflation.
Right. So, but I'm just saying with the inflation,
Yeah.
when they're giving away $8.5 billion to non-existent companies, that money's got to come from someplace, and it raises our taxes, which we're already strapped for.
Yeah.
I saw, and this is, I guess, maybe when you can throw out some of the statistics. Yeah, so over the next year, the grocery bill just groceries alone will increase by like over 10%, which is like an extra $1,000.
Yeah, I've got the projection to be 11.8.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to one step back and clarify what I meant when you were talking about like programs.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you meant like government programs to assist people in the ways that we actually need to be assisted by changing the social determinants of health, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't thinking about these non-existent companies.
And they don't care about our health either.
Yeah, so that's another topic.
Yes, it is.
But so some of the inflation numbers that I have. So eggs, obviously, we've talked about that, but that's the number that I have actually is it's 59.9%.
Wow.
So it's actually 60% eggs have gone up. Butter, 31.4%. Airline fares, which is always a problem, and it's a luxury for most. I mean, you don't have to fly anywhere, but you do have to eat. But still 28.5. This one gets me. Lettuce.
Oh, yes.
Because we've seen this in action. Lettuce is up 25%. And it's bonkers that we go into a grocery store and you have to pay $6 for a head of iceberg lettuce.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And where we live, folks, we don't really have the opportunity to do extensive gardening. But, all these people who are turning their front lawns into raised garden beds really have the right idea. Growing your own food is becoming more and more appealing. Raising your own chickens, speaking of the eggs, right? But chicken itself is up 11%, milk 12.5%, potatoes, where in the early stages of the pandemic, I don't know if you remember, they couldn't give away potatoes.
Right. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We saw tons and tons, hundreds of tons of potatoes going to waste.
Yeah, and they're doing like French fries too, like free French fries at restaurants because they just had a surplus.
Yeah. Now potatoes are up 13%.
Wow.
Breakfast cereal 13%. Apples 6.5%. Rice 14%. Rice is like ubiquitous. Coffee, I know coffee is always at the mercy of inflation. Coffee's up 14%. Bread, 16%.
16%.
Yeah. But, we can't necessarily grow and make our own coffee at home. And nor do I want to bake my own bread. We've tried that and we failed at it. But, we can't really grow our own rice here either. But lettuce, tomatoes, things like that, we might want to start thinking about for several reasons. I mean, it's just good to be self-sustaining and not have to rely on the government, as you were saying.
Exactly. But because of certain regulations, you're not allowed to have chickens in certain parts of different cities.
Yeah.
So I'd argue too that that this is all designed by the government to limit the amount of food that we're able to grow, how we're able to grow it, because you can't even fish for certain fish at certain times because of regulations.
You think,
Yes.
or you, on the voice of conspiracy, believe it to be a control mechanism for removing our free will and narrowing our choices. Is that what I'm hearing?
Narrowing our choices, because I don't want to use that free will conversation, that language, because I have a specific definition and beliefs about free will that we talked about in other episodes.
Right.
But yes, essentially, in layman's terms, yes, it restricts our free will and our choices.
So there's been a bit of a bounce back. I guess the inflation rate has dropped a little tiny bit in the last, I think, 1 week. How do you explain that from a conspiracy theorist perspective?
It's 1 month. Over a longer period of time, we're still headed for a recession. Interest rates, they were talking just before Christmas that in Canada that they were probably going to raise the interest rates at least one more time early in 2023, like February or March. So there's going to be no relief. Plus, then in April, across the country except in Quebec, carbon tax is being increased for fuel. Things are keep going up and up and up and up, and like this 10% or 12%, 11.5 or whatever percent inflation overall for groceries. That's an early prediction.
Yeah,
what's going to be actually in December.
Well, but that's why I'm asking you. Like, you know, it's actually gone back down a bit.
But I'm saying like everything is still increasing in pricing. Like gas is kind of held just below $2 a liter for a couple of weeks now, which is great.
Yeah.
But as soon as something triggers, like we get a nasty storm or halts production someplace down in the refineries down in the United States, things are going to go back up.
So we hit a high of 233.9, I think, last year, didn't we? 233.9.
Yeah, something like that.
And what was the low we paid recently? Wasn't it like 145 or something?
Yes. Yeah.
Not recently, I should say, you know, but within the last couple of months, I guess. Right?
Yep.
So do you think gas is going to go back up to that 230 again?
Oh, absolutely. Because with this climate agenda, this green agenda that the governments of the world are really, really pushing for, that they're trying to phase out oil and gas, which is even going to raise the price even more because there's millions of cars on the road. There's millions of homes on the road, There's millions of homes that are heated by natural gas.
And electricity is going up 14%.
Yeah, and that's only going to go up even more. Plus, I'm scared to see if we're going to be having like these rolling blackouts because of everything's being electrified with the cars.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to pay for the infrastructure of the electrical grid to accommodate these electric cars. If everybody...
But that's long term.
No, that's 2030.
Yeah.
2030. That's
sooner than you think, I guess.
Yeah. And like 2025 is one of the milestones that something like 60% of cars must be sold, must be electric.
Wow.
And then by 2030, like these unrealistic goals, and it's only going to increase. And I saw this article the other day, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but in the US, the Biden administration is considering banning gas, like gas ranges in.
What?
Yeah.
And then they have to redo all the ovens across the world?
Exactly.
I mean, across the United States?
Yeah, because it's gas, and it's bad for the climate and for the environment.
What? No, that'll never fly. Restaurants, everything.
Yeah.
Nah.
But then that forces these subsidy programs that the governments are going to put out, and you'll have to pay a third of what it would actually cost. But somebody's got to pay for that money somewhere, and it's going to be the consumer and like the tax-paying citizen. They're going to be paying more for everything else to pay for these government programs, which goes back to the inflation and goes back to the control that the government has on us.
Well, that's depressing. What a high note. Let's end on that high note there. You know what I think we should do, actually? It would be interesting. Make a note in our program planning so that December of this year, we revisit. You and I sit down and listen to this podcast, and we look at the numbers and see where we're at in December of 2023.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So stick with us, folks. We'll see what actually happens to inflation in Canada and the US. By all means, make sure you comment if you live elsewhere in the world. Let us know what your financial situation's like with respect to inflation.
Let us know. We're always interested in hearing other people's perspectives.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll leave it there. If you like the show, please subscribe. We'll leave links in the show notes.
And please check out our Patreon. We're going to be adding so much more extra content there. So we'd love to have members on our Patreon getting more in-depth analysis, photos, bloopers, all kinds of freebies, discounts when we do merch. There's all kinds of stuff that you're going to get as a benefit.
Yep, go check that out.
So for today, I'm Science saying stay curious, but rely on the facts.
And I'm Conspiracy. And remember, being paranoid is smart. We'll see you next time.
Hope you enjoyed your coffee.
This week's episode of Science vs. Conspiracy over coffee was produced by Logica. Research and writing was done by Bob Homer and Jennifer Timer.